So before I knew what purpose was, I was just a boy with a song in my heart. What does it mean to be called but feel unworthy? Wow. So for me, growing up, I was always told you had a gift, you had a gift. So I always knew I had something, but to actually carry the burden of that gift and still fighting within myself of knowing who I was and if God loved me for who I was always a big thing. In the black church, LGBT, homosexuality, that was always something that was frowned upon and preached on so hard. Like you would go in church and people would preach down on that. So, to be called was very hard because, when I would sing and allow God to use me, I felt like, wow, I'm not supposed to be doing this. God doesn't love me, God doesn't care about me. But when you have that calling on your life, when you actually realize you get in the word that God is love and you actually start knowing him for yourself, it changes your mind a lot. And I feel like once I got outside of the four walls of that, just the concept of church, and I actually grew my relationship with God spiritually myself, I realized that God does love me. I am one of his children. I am his child. And he gave me this gift to actually sing. And it was definitely a struggle for many, many years to get to a comfortable place where I can actually feel like what I was doing actually mattered. All right, for me growing up, it was definitely church. A lot of kids, they did different things, but for us, it was church. We had Bible study, we had choir rehearsal, we had Sunday school, we had vacation Bible school, we had morning service, afternoon service. So it was church. And don't let it be a revival. That means that we in church every night of the week. So we can't talk about my youth and my growing up unless we talk about everything. And today we're here somewhere that really played a big piece and part of my life. We're at Faith Temple, where I grew up. This church I was at for 32 years. So from 1988 when I was born until 2020, this is home for me. So much memories, growing up. I didn't know my power of singing yet. My mom used to get me up there to sing. I used to cry, whether it was here at Faith Temple or my home church in Nassau Independence Drive. I used to cry. And then it wasn't until I really tapped in to really understand the gift that I had. And that's when I really just started pushing. And this church is where my singing started,
I know Randall was a singer from he was a baby. He always singing. At first he used to coo, how the babies coo. And his coo used to be in the language of songs, I guess. And then as he began to grow, he always wanted to sing in church. And I think one time, Sister Lynette called him to sing. And he sang the song. I don't know if you remember this, but he sang the song and he was kind of crying and not really there. But as time went on, his voice got stronger. He got better at it, and there was no stopping. He just began to sing everywhere, all through the house, in the bathroom, just singing like, making melody in your hearts unto the Lord. Right? So, I know he was a singer.
So I am Denzel Roll. I am Rendell Roll's brother. I remember so much about Rendell growing up, like just him being known as the singer. Like everywhere we went, like whether he was in school or especially at church, the singer. That's what he's always been known as. Growing up, I always remember hearing him singing around the house. And it's translated to being here at church and him always in the choir, leading songs and just singing. I'm looking forward to his parts and stuff like that. It was great growing up, Rendell. He was always been I guess you'll call him like a bird, like like a chirping bird, always singing around.
So I grew up with church. That was all I knew. God was everything that I knew. So my childhood was a lot of that. And when I would say probably like when I got to my preteens, that's when I really started listening to music on my own and was exposed to different music, because in my house growing up, it was gospel music. Now I can tell you all about the different gospel artists, but growing up it was gospel music. And if it was any R&B or what they would call secular music, it would be Luther Vandross or Whitney or Michael Jackson. That's just the extent that it would go. So when I started listening to music on my own, and even my sister as well, you know, she would be playing BET and different things like that, I started falling in love with Destiny's Child and Beyonce and hearing Usher and hearing all of that.
Yeah, so I knew Rendell was into music from a child. It was kind of annoying, but because he was always singing in the shower, just annoying the heck out of me, just always freaking singing. That's it.
So, you know, in my childhood of, you know, faith in God, I found other music and I'm just like, I like this, you know.
All right, y'all, so listen, let me give you the real tea, okay? So when I first met Rendell, like every single thing that we would do, he would sing. And I'm like, can you please stop singing? What is going on? Like everything was music for him. He really like introduced me to Destiny's Child, Beyonce, things of that nature, because, you know, I'm from around the way, so I like my little trap stuff, little trap music. But I would say at the soul of him, he is music.
It was hard because at times you would be like, well, I'm supposed to be in the church, I can't listen to this. And you may think it's crazy, but when you're growing up in the church and it's like church, especially in the Pentecostal where I came from, Church of God, it was frowned upon. But that's when I first got my first love of music. And Whitney was always my girl. Whitney was the one that I was in love with. She was just everything. Her voice, just how she would sing, everything. I remember even in elementary school when I went to Edison, we used to have her playing the national anthem, or they used to play her, you know, her version of the national anthem every morning. So, you know, I got to hear Whitney as I was growing up, and she just carried over with me. And then when I found Destiny's Child and I seen Beyonce and I heard the group, like that was another love that formed for me. And just even with Beyonce, seeing her craft and seeing how hard she worked from a child up, you know, that inspired me. And that stuck with me as I started making my music. And when I got into a certain age, I remember I wrote my first song in 2001, and that was after our house burnt down. I was in the 7th grade and I heard the song Survivor on the radio with Destiny's Child, and that song really stuck with me, and that was where my songwriting started. So I think I was maybe 12, about to be 13 or something like that, around that age, and that's when the songwriting started. And you know, my childhood just kind of went from there. But still, you know, I still would sneak and listen to the music because we wasn't supposed to. And then it got to the point where, you know, I would just listen to that music anytime I wanted to. And that's really what was embedded into me. And that kind of started my journey on the music of like, hey, this is really what I want to do once I started writing. So, you know, listening to that music was fun, but I would tell you my roots and what really grounded me was gospel music. Like I said, my mom, that's what she played. So I grew up listening to the Winans, BB and CC, Yolanda Adams, Kurt Franklin, all of that. And Kurt Franklin was my first like really exposure to like, you know, gospel music doesn't have to sound like this, you know, it can sound however it wants to be. And, you know, Kurt Franklin just had that young, new, fresh sound. So that's what really molded me as an individual, my faith, you know, knowing that I can always count on God or go to God. And even though I still was dealing with the different struggles within myself, I knew that God was there. I had to mentally tell myself that even though I may not have believed it sometimes, but he was definitely there. And gospel music grounded me, and that's the core. Even though, you know, I love all types of music, I'm always going to love gospel music. That's where my roots started from. That's where I started from. So that's why doing this project is so special and needed, because it was time that I, gave God something back. I always give a gospel or inspirational song on every project or every album that I do, but it was time to do something in this nature. That orange house right here, this is where we grew up until 2001. I don't know if Miss Vera still is next door. Miss Vera used to be our neighbor. She used to always snitch on Shani when Shani was doing things she was supposed to be doing. But this is it right here, 5112 North 19th Street. So this is the house or the plot that we grew up in. But yeah, that is it. That's my childhood, y'all. So the journey is going to continue, but definitely a lot of memories here, a foundation of me becoming who I am now. I started struggling with my identity at a young age, and growing up in the church, like I mentioned before, was very tough because Black churches are very, very, in my opinion, at some times, not all churches, but at some times, growing up, especially in the 90s, were very homophobic, so it was always preached about. So as somebody who knew who they were and, wanted to be in the church and wanted to please God, would be praying, God, take this away from me. Like when they say, living a double life. And what I feel for me that meant was coming to church, smiling and being happy, but not really being happy because, I felt like I was disappointing God for being alive. I felt like, well, if I'm this way, God truly doesn't love me. Like, why am I even coming to church? Why? But it wasn't until I got older that I had to realize that, God is within me. God is love. So no matter where I am, I'm always a child of God. And that took me a long time to get there, not even in my 20s, but in my 30s. A lot of times, and I'm not talking about just my own church that I grew up in, but just the Black church in general, for so many years, use, people that were in the LGBT community when it comes to the music or when it comes to being the minister of music or singing or whatever that we can be used for, but just use them in that way. They can do this music and they can do that, but they can't do anything else. It's sad to see. In my eyes, I can never do that. I can never condemn somebody for just being them. If you are someone who stole something, you can have a second chance. Even if you committed adultery, you can have a second chance. But it was just something about the homosexuality. You're going to hell. You got to change your life over. You got to, that's a lifestyle. That's this. I don't think anybody would want to grow up being gay, knowing that, okay, this is a choice. I can choose to do this, or I can choose to be one way, and would choose to continue to be gay with all the different things that's happening in the world, with all the abuse, all the murder, just everything that was going on. And not even to that extent, but just like how people treat you, how people look at you, how people talk about you. It's like, who would choose that? Who would? And that's something that I struggle with a lot growing up and still wanting to be in the church. But at the end of the day, I had to take my mind off of the church walls. It was about me and God and not anybody else. Studio Chronicles. I'm in the studio with Keys. We doing this gospel project. Listen, it's going to be a good time, all right? It's going to be a good time. So when it came down to the music, gospel was in my roots, but it was just so much pain and just a lot of memories that I didn't want to have attached to it. No, I didn't leave it alone, but when I decided on doing music, especially in college, I wanted to do R&B. That's what I wanted to do. And though I stepped away from gospel, it never stopped knocking. It was always there. And, I would always just incorporate God in everything that I actually sung and did. So it's crazy because even though I was singing what may be considered R&B, neo soul, doing my own thing, still God was in there. Even how I would maybe sing my harmonies or how I would vocally arrange everything together, it was still that church boy in me. You can tell, even when I did my runs and stuff like that. So It was never far away from me, but I just wanted to take a break. And I'm like, even when I first started with the music, when I first went into it, I was writing R&B, and then I did my first EP ever was a gospel EP, and I felt good about it. And I was just like, but you know what, I want to do R&B. That's what people listening to, and I wanted to do what I felt was what people were listening to. So my next project, I rebranded. My first project, I was Delb. I rebranded and I went to Ram Music, and that's when I released my first ever album, Memoirs of Love. And even in that album, I talk about so many different things, but you will find God in there. And I think it was once I already knew. I was like, I told Babes, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna work on this gospel project. It's in me. God placed it in me, but I was just working on other things, and I just kept pushing it away. And I was like, I'm gonna get to it. But it was like, God was like, okay, when are you gonna get to it? And He knew it was in my heart. And I would never forget, I was at work, and Miss Grace, she actually came up to me and she was like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for you. And I'm thinking something wrong. I'm like, what's going on? I had a dream. God spoke to me in a dream. And I was like, really? She was like, He said that you need to stop playing and record that gospel album. Said that your voice, your message is going to reach so many different people in such a unique way, especially the youth, the younger generation. So I need you to work on that. And I was like, wow. I was like, okay. I couldn't even say anything because that was what I said. I said, after this project, it is going to be the gospel project. So that was just a confirmation. God was like, nothing else before me. And a lot of times when we're doing different things, we know we have a calling, or we know we want to do something, and we run from it because we're just scared, or maybe we're not comfortable, or we want to be looked at as, oh, that's the gospel kid, or that's that. But sometimes you just have to let that go and let God use you in any way, when it's in any gift that you have. Whether you're writing a book, I don't want to write a book about myself. People are not going to want to read that, but the different things that we are going through as individuals, somebody can always relate to it. And that's the thing about my music. For the longest, I would even question in my smaller circle, but definitely with me and Bay, we talk a lot. And I would say, sometimes, I don't know, like my music, I feel I need to change, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. And he was like, why? Be you. Your message is your message, and somebody needs to hear it.
He introduced me back to God, to be honest with you. Like, I grew up Jehovah's Witness. We was dibbling and dabbling here and there, but never grew up in the church. But as soon as we went to Faith Temple and I heard him sing, I was like, oh, I gotta come here. I think it's something to this God thing. Like,
when I started writing this music, God was just pouring into me, and I was just writing so many different things. And a lot of things were from my personal view. A lot of things were just encouragement to the world and what's going on. So I'm excited. And I'm happy now that I'm in this moment. And I'm praying that I'm making you proud, God. I'm praying that I'm making you proud. But I'm also praying that when this project does come, people actually just listen to the lyrics. They listen to the message, and hopefully it touches one person, you that's watching this. Hopefully it touches you when you hear this project. So what I can say about this album and this project is you hear a little bit of everything. One thing I would also say is this album is not about perfection, but it's about the purity of just my love for God. And one of the songs that's on there is He Carried My Cross. And that song right there just talks just about how everything that I personally have gone through, or may even go through in the future, or just how anybody goes through anything, God sent His Son to carry that cross for us. And He gave up His life, and that's the biggest sacrifice. So that song means so much to me. Another one is Good to Me, and it's just talking about how good God has been. So many times that I could have lost my life. I should have lost my life. I done did some crazy things in my life too. So, I know I'm not the only one. I know some people done did some crazy stuff, but we are still standing and we're still here. So God is good to all of us. So, that's one of the new singles that's actually coming out. Good to me. So definitely just this album is going to have everything. It's going to have faith. It's going to have love. It's going to have forgiveness. It's going to have serenity. It's going to have them bangers too, just letting you know. So it's you're going to get everything. But what I feel like this is a coming home project where I'm comfortable back in my roots where it all started, and just implementing just all the different things that I've learned over the years from a lot of people in my life. I look at Grace Weber. Grace, that's one of my good friends in the industry, and I told her, I said, I want you to know that you are one of my mentors. And she's just been so amazing and instrumental and just always so positive. And also another one, Janelle. Like, Janelle has been just amazing, just with her love, her support, her teachings, her just everything, how she gave me so many different things to work on within me, work with my voice, and just her being a beautiful spirit. So all of that, and she's even a part of this album. So you're going to hear some things from her too. So just how everyone who's played those important parts in there, even Mr. Douglas, my hungry vegan, definitely the number one supporter besides Mom. Mom's always going to claim that she's the number one. And then, of course, Mama T, they always going to battle it out. But, Johnny has been one of the biggest supporters of just every movement that I've made with my music, and just everything. So it's going to be a great experience, and I cannot wait for it to be out for you guys to hear it. But this whole project, this right here that we're filming, this is for you to just understand and know just the passion that I had behind this project and what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that was so different. I know I'm not a huge artist right now, but who's to say that in just 3 months or 3 years, it won't be millions and millions of people looking back at this and like, oh my gosh, look what he was doing then. And I just wanted to kind of just show that anybody can do anything if you put your mind to it. And it doesn't matter where you come from. It doesn't matter how you look. And that can be facial features, that can be body, that can be color, hair, short, whatever it is. You can do anything that you set your mind to. And I hope that when you listen to it, you have that sincerity in your ear. When you hear the music, you will definitely get where I was coming from.
I always tell him that you are my favorite singer. Always. You are my favorite singer. Whether it's rhythm and blues, R&B, gospel, whatever it is, I just want to hear his voice because to me it made melody in my heart.
If I can say anything, I would say that God's grace is not about who you love, but it's you. He loves you. His love is for you. Doesn't matter who you love, doesn't matter who you are, whether that's straight, gay, black, white, big, small, tall, short, whatever it is, God loves you. He created you. I know there's many people who have lost their lives just from this world and not being able to be them and live in their truth. And I hope that within this, you find something where you can see you, whether it's a little boy or a little girl that's watching this, or even if it's a grown man or woman, and maybe it's that little boy and girl that's inside of you that is still searching for your voice. You can still speak and live in your truth, whatever that may be. We live in a world where social media has so much to say about what everybody else is doing. Don't buy into all of that. I know that I fell victim to that plenty of times, but don't buy into that. What I can really say is find your core, find your group, find your circle. And family doesn't always have to be blood. Find those people. If you don't have that family unit, find those people around you that support you, that love on you, that tell you that, hey, you are doing great, or hey, I see you, or hey, I'm just thinking about you. I want to see if you're okay. It's important to have people like that in your life. And I can say that I do have a family unit, but I also do have a close circle of friend unit as well that I consider family, from all the way from growing up to when I was in the first grade to when I was in high school, carrying over those relationships into adulthood. And at the end of this project, when the last song plays, I hope that one of the songs on there, if not all of them, has left you with something to think about. Loving yourself is so important, and loving God, having the love of God is just amazing. And truly, it's amazing to know God, and it's amazing to as you see, I keep saying amazing because he just truly is that. I hope you enjoyed something from this. I hope that with this you got to know me a little bit better. I can't wait for you to hear the project. The project is coming out pretty soon. It might be after this drops, you never know. But I'm super excited. I want to thank everybody that was involved with this. I definitely have to thank Let's Roll Production because they are amazing, and just being able to tell my story in a way. And I'm hoping that years down the line, I can look back on this and smile and show my kids this, or show my nieces and nephews, like, it's okay to want to dream and do whatever you have your mind set to. There's no limitations. And if we teach our kids this now, if we teach our village, it truly takes a village, and we teach them that there's no limitation on their dream, nobody can crush their dream. Nobody can tell them that they can't do it, because even if they do say that, they know within themselves it was already built that I can do anything through Christ that strengthens me, but also I can do anything that I set my mind to. So I hope you guys enjoyed the journey. More to come. Stay tuned. Peace.
At the core of him, he is music. He is soul. That's exactly who he is.
You've been good to me. You've been so good to me. You've been good to me. You've been so good to me. Anytime I needed you, you are right there. Always on time for me. You've been good to me. You've been so good to me. Every day ain't perfect, but every day ain't hard. I've been through some things